My name is Dr. Daniel Fox, and I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas and an expert in the area of personality disorders. And today I wanted to make a video on splitting. Now, this is something that is often only attributed to borderline personality disorder, but the reality is that you actually do see it in individuals that have narcissistic personality disorder as well as antisocial personality disorder. Now, when we see it in narcissistic personality disorder, usually see it in the split is usually that the individual with the narcissism tends to see themselves as superior and great and wonderful, so that's the extreme, and they see everyone else as stupid. So that's where that split is. For antisocial folks, you tend to see the antisocial individual, they tend to see themselves as very powerful, and then everyone else is very weak. So that's typically where you see the split in that case. But this video is going to specifically address splitting in those with borderline personality disorder. Okay, so let's get started. So what splitting is that it is a protective mechanism that folks with borderline personality disorder that they tend to fall into or use when they get a sense of rejection or fear. So they use this splitting to avoid being hurt. Okay? They tend to see things as all good or all bad. People are either angels or demons, saviors or torturers, and this viewpoint tends to vacillate a lot, so it can change. For example, with a lot of the clients that I work with that fall along that borderline personality disorder continuum, there are times that they really hate me and they can't stand me, and they tell me, and that's fine because I recognize that it is part of the process. And then there's other times where they love me and they appreciate me and they really idealize me. So that's where that split is for these folks, is how they see others and how they tend to interpret certain moves that the individual makes, or failure to follow through on expectations. So in individuals with borderline personality disorder, they tend to be very hyper-focused. So they're very hyper-focused on verbals and non-verbals. And any time that someone else may stray from that expectancy of what they expect that other individual to do, whether it's their therapist, friend, mother, sister, brother, cousin, whoever it may be, when that doesn't meet those expectations, they tend to see that person as all bad. And then when that person does follow through on those expectations, they tend to see them as all good. So they're the angel or they're the demon. But it causes a lot of problems and issues, and we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about techniques on how to manage this and deal with this as well. So the problem with splitting is that it distorts how you see the world, right? So because what it does is, instead of seeing the world like this, it makes it very narrow. And you can imagine that as a protective device, that would make sense, right? So if I can simplify all of the variables down to 2, which is trying to read someone, trust someone, understand someone, manage behaviors, but if I can break it down to 2, that might make me feel safe. In a way, it's empowering for a lot of folks, but also confusing. And if you know someone, or perhaps you have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, that makes a lot of sense. In that I feel a sense of power, but yet confusion. So the confusion makes me feel powerful, but the powerful isn't the same type of powerful that makes me feel safe, because I feel unsafe. And this tends to make a lot of sense to my clients who fall on this spectrum, and perhaps it does for you as well. So by limiting this view, right, they tend to lose different opportunities. And this view, and the part of why it is there, if I just address that again, is that because you're only seeing through that limited view, and the view is typically sort of distorted by certainly the borderline personality disorder, but other components as well: anxiety, fear, anger, sadness. And what happens is that it distorts your beliefs, your thoughts, and your feelings, and you become overwhelmed, and then it feels easier to just split, okay? To say that everything is all good and everything is all bad. And what happens is that all this anxiety is it's building up and pushing you forward and pushing you, and you're splitting these individuals, how you perceive them, different situations, things of that nature. With all that anxiety, what happens is it builds this bubble, and that bubble eventually pops. And when the bubble pops, that's when a depressive state typically occurs, right? Because human beings cannot maintain that high level of anxiety. So once we have that high level of anxiety for so long, it pops, and then we end up in the depressive state. So you see this sort of go over and over again, and splitting can be a main component of this. And what also happens in relationships with individuals that have borderline personality disorder is that the relationships end up sort of breaking up prematurely. In treatment, I've seen splitting has ended therapeutic relationships prematurely. Now, sometimes those individuals will sort of realize, well, maybe he's not that bad. They may go to another therapist and realize, comparatively, he really wasn't that bad. In some cases, they may feel that way. And then splitting, right? What the splitting wants you to do is it wants you to think that all mistakes are intentional. Okay? And we know that isn't true. Splitting also wants you to think that it is directed to cause you some type of pain. Okay? That the reason why people aren't meeting your expectations, doing what you expect them to do, and the reason why you see them as so malicious is that it's that sense and loss of safety and control, and that splitting feeds into it. And the reason why that I sort of referred to it as a separate entity is because I like my clients to see it as something separate. It may feel part of your borderline personality disorder, but when I work with folks, what I want to do is I want them to develop this sense of personality, the sense of self, outside of their borderline personality. Because sometimes folks, they get really locked into that sense of self and they define themselves by their borderline personality. And that's a hard thing to do, because if you see yourself as borderline personality, it's hard to see yourself any other way. And in my clients, we work to do that. We work to grow beyond that borderline personality disorder. And I hope that makes sense to you. But what I want to do is I want to challenge you a little bit, is to ask yourself, what if all behavior has a probability of success and failure? That instead of splitting and that everything is black or everything is white, but that there's a shade of gray. That everything has a probability of success and failure. Now, there are certain things that we can do to increase that probability of success, and there are certainly things we can do to increase that probability of failure as well. So what can we do? But when we get into that viewpoint of splitting, sometimes we lose our sense of self. Sometimes we certainly do lose control of the situation. Okay? And it causes us to lose that ability to utilize our thoughts, feelings, right? Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and we lose control of those things. And sometimes we end up losing relationships prematurely. So one of the things that I like to do with my clients that have a tendency to engage in splitting behaviors is, the first thing I want to do is to ask them, are you willing to challenge that the belief and that in the world it's not all angels and all demons, that people are not either all good or all bad? Now, I've had some clients that say, absolutely not. That's how I function. That's how I want to function. And I'm not going to do that. It's easier for me to go the other way. And I respect that choice. That means that you're not at a point where you're ready to challenge that. And it's something that we'll revisit as we continue to go through the course of treatment. And perhaps, you're not willing to do that because part of that may feel unsafe. So there are some things to do. And if you are at that level, that point where you're like, well, I'm not really ready to challenge my splitting yet, because even though it's linked to a lot of anxiety and maybe relationship issues and other types of problems, but even sort of those maladaptive patterns still feel safe. We still feel connected to them. So they're not ready to do that. But even so, I want you to keep going. I want you to keep listening to the video, because maybe you'll change your mind as you hear about the technique. Maybe it's something you'll try once or twice. So just stick with me and let's just keep going. So in asking my clients, so can you accept that the world is a shade of gray? And if they say, well, I'm willing to entertain the idea, I love it. I'm like, okay. So what we want to do then, we want to challenge those thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, right? That it is a shade of gray. And I like to use chocolate as an example. I try to use as much chocolate as I can. Big chocolate person, love a lot of chocolate. So you say, okay, so if you love chocolate, you love everything about chocolate. Chocolate is all good. Okay. How would you feel about chocolate-covered grasshoppers? Now, some people that have traveled the world have had chocolate-covered grasshoppers and they're okay with it. But the majority of folks are a little hesitant about chocolate-covered grasshoppers. But can you still have good things with chocolate? Yes. But you may not like chocolate-covered grasshoppers. So that's that shade of gray. So it's kind of having that understanding. If that sounds weird, it's just something that I want you to think about. Next time you see a chocolate bar in the grocery store, or you're about to eat one, or you're eating something that's chocolate, say, okay, this is on my gradient of all good or all bad. So something to realize, but we're not done. We're going to keep going. So what I want you to do is that when you get this sense that you're about to split, I want you to stop and assess your perceptions. Assess what's going on around you before you take them as all true or all false. Be aware of those splitting terms that are in your head. All, none, never, those extreme terms, okay, that we all hold on to, and those that have a tendency to split use them every day, multiple times. So when you hear those extreme terms, I want you to stop and evaluate the situation. Try to take off those splitting glasses and see the world as it really is. See it as that shade of gray. See it that chocolate is a wonderful thing, but maybe you're not into chocolate grasshoppers. Try to see it in that way, okay? Now, we're going to take another step further with this, and I want you to think of a situation, right, that you tend to split in, right, and determine whether it falls on this continuum. And this continuum, right, which I'll show here, which is all good or all bad. And where does this fall? Very few things fall at the far end of this extreme, okay? So when you're assessing a situation, right, I want you to take in those factors that's in the environment that supports it, but also what negates it. Okay. So if you're like, well, Dr. Fox is all good, and that's great if you think that, but, right, so if I'm all good, but what are some factors, right, that maybe I'm not all good, that I'm a fallible person, that sometimes I may make mistakes. And this is stuff that my clients and I, that we talk about and that we process, right? And it's something that we work on. And it's something, so someone who you feel is all good or all bad, what would move them more towards the center? What would move them more to that shade of gray, away from that sensation of splitting? Okay. So when we do that, okay, we want to evaluate these situations as much as we can and as clear-headed as we can. Okay. So before we're triggered, catch those words, right? Catch those extreme splitting words that are in your head. Okay, slow down and reevaluate the situation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a PDF as well as a picture of this scale that's all good to all bad, so that you can download it, maybe put it on your phone, print it out, keep it at work, keep it anywhere, to remind you about staying in that shade of gray, about that continuum that's there. There's also some questions that I put on there as well. One is, right, where do your beliefs, thoughts, and feelings fall? So you can reassess that. What makes them less good and all bad? Okay. And then explore with a clear mind. So a little reminder, okay, for you to have as well. Okay, that clear mind is going to help us see that what is in that middle part of the world in which we live, that shade of gray. Okay, I do recognize that splitting becomes a habit, and that old habits are hard to grow out of. I certainly understand that. And like splitting, it's going to be hard to get out of that habit, but you can do it by slowing down, recognize it, just the techniques that I just mentioned, using this scale, that you can do that. And get yourself this continuum of balance, and this continuum of cessation of giving yourself this greater sense of control, because I know that you can do it. It's possible that you can do it. Okay? And what you'll find is that you'll have more balanced thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and behaviors over the course of time. Okay? And what I want to do with all of my clients is empower them with a sense of growth and encouragement where they can grow beyond their BPD. It's not something that they have to carry with them forever, that it's something that they can shed like a skin and grow beyond it. Okay? So I want you to keep this continuum with you. I want you to download it, check it out, use it as much as possible. Please be patient. This is a skill you're unlearning, splitting. It may have been with you for a long period of time, so it may take a little while for you to grow beyond it, for you to develop another skill. And it's something that you can do. This is something I've had great success with a lot of my clients in working on lessening the frequency of splitting, challenging some of those splitting thoughts, beliefs that folks have to grow beyond it. And it's something that you absolutely can do. Thank you. I appreciate you taking your time to listen and watch the video. I'd love to hear any comments that maybe you've had with splitting and how you manage it. How it appears in your life, because I've noticed that other people are reading comments on my videos as well, and I think that it is helpful for other folks to see that as well. Again, thank you very much. Please subscribe to my channel if you like the videos that I'm putting out there, and I appreciate all your time as always, and please don't forget that you should have hope about your borderline personality disorder, that you can grow beyond it, that you can empower yourself and make good and healthy choices. You really can. So I want to say thank you again, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.